So this story comes from a guy named Matt who lives in Pittsburgh with his girlfriend Jenna. Last spring, they decided to take a weekend getaway down to West Virginia. They'd both been cooped up in the city for way too long, and Matt thought a hiking trip into the Appalachian backcountry would be a good reset for them. They drove south, parked at a small trailhead outside of Elkins, and started a long hike with the idea of camping overnight. The first half of the day was fine. Sunlight coming through the canopy, plenty of birds, and even a few deer off the trail. But as the hours passed, Matt realized the trail markers weren't matching the map he had printed. They weren't lost yet, but the sense of direction was slipping away. By the time the sun was starting to dip, they knew for sure they were off the trail. And that's when they came across something strange, a set of old power poles. The wires were sagging down and disappearing into the trees. Matt thought maybe they led back to a road, so they followed them. About 20 minutes later of walking, the forest opened up in what looked like a forgotten town. Maybe a half a dozen buildings all slumped and rotting, with weeds pushing through the cracks in the pavement. Windows were shattered, doors hung loose. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find in a horror movie, an old coal town swallowed by the woods. And at first, they were relieved. Any sign of civilization felt like progress. But the longer they stood there, the worse it felt. The streets were empty, but they didn't feel empty. Jenna swore she saw movement behind one of the second-story windows of an old boarding house. Matt heard what sounded like doors slowly creaking open, 2 buildings away. They started walking faster, looking for a way out. And that's when they both heard footsteps, deliberate, heavy, pacing behind them. Matt spun around, shining his flashlight, but there was just nothing there, just the empty road and rows of leaning houses. At one point, they passed what looked like an old butcher shop. Inside, chairs were still lined up, but all of them faced the wrong direction, towards the back wall. And on that wall, painted in fading red, were words Matt couldn't read from that distance, but he swears he saw a figure standing just inside the doorway. When he blinked, it was gone. They didn't run. They were too afraid of getting turned around again, but they moved as fast as they could, following the poles until eventually they reconnected with a dirt road. That road led them back to their car just before midnight. When they got home, they tried to look up that town that they had stumbled into, but no map showed any settlement where they had been hiking. It wasn't on any satellite images, and when Matt tried searching for old mining records, nothing matched. But he did find old stories of feral people living deep in the woods and living in abandoned buildings. To this day, both of them still swear they weren't alone in that ghost town. The place looked dead, but it didn't feel abandoned. Something was watching them the entire time, and they say no amount of weekend getaways could ever convince them to step foot in those mountains again.